Okay, let's go.
Right, fellow Africans, thank you and welcome to our new week where we also and continue to dive deeper in Africa. Fellow Africans, being on 20th of January 2025, I am once again profoundly honored and pleased to bring to you our sixth episode of the Change for African campaign, particularly on our pillar number one, and that is governance, or the governance that we want in Africa. Therefore, fellow Africans, help us affirm of the need for good, visionary, and accountable governance system in Africa, just to name but a few, will be one of the very critical matters with huge controversies across Africa, and that is education or quality education in Africa. Welcome. And therefore, fellow Africans, still today, our African state to help us exemplify on this is a country, eastern side of Africa, country number 254, and that is Kenya. So, fellow Africans, before we dive deeper into this topic about quality education in Africa, I would like us to have some statistics of our literacy rate in Africa. Remember, literacy rate is the percentage of people aged 15 and above who can both read and write. So we want to have that comparison between the literacy rate of Africa as a whole compared to that of Kenya as a single African country. So the literacy rate of Africa is rated at about 62%, and that of Kenya as an individual is rated at about 82.88%. And some of the countries that have high literacy rates in Africa, we have Seychelles at about 96%. We have Sao Tome and Principe at about 94%, and Namibia at about 90%. And then we have also countries that do not have very lower literacy rates in Africa. That is Chad and Ghana, and not Ghana, I'm sorry, but South Sudan at about 27%. So realize that still we have a very huge contrast from one country, or disparity from one country to another across Africa when it comes to matters of quality education in Africa. Still we are not there, because it's like Africa is divided and we are moving in very different or distinguished directions that should not be having, because we are one people. So therefore, fellow Africans, oh dear fellow Africans, even more deeper to guide us on this will be the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which has an ambition of quality education across the globe by 2030. That is Vision 2030. It is therefore great for us to understand what really quality education means, and if we really are offering that in our great African continent. Quality education is one that gives every child the opportunity to thrive in their own capacity by acquiring knowledge, values, and attitudes necessary to lead productive and fulfilling lives. So the big question is, are we having an education system that offers the graduates and intellectuals in Africa whereby they are able to lead a productive and fulfilling lives? Is it even pertinent in some of the countries, the education that is offered in Africa? That is the big question. Our area of focus, therefore, is about to lead productive and fulfilling lives. Right from the lower level to the highest level, the African education system in different countries has nurtured and produced very highly young trained intellectuals, notably Kenya to speak as for today. Fellow Africans, the channels and paths through which most of these young great Africans used to reach to their peak is the puzzle that lacks goodwill and passion to solve it currently. Beloved Africa, corruption within this key sector, poor policy implementation, teacher issues including perennial strikes, and infrastructure deficiencies, more so in terms of the disparities in the urban and rural areas. Key in rural areas, there's a very huge contrast revealed when it comes to such times or in such areas. Let's proceed. Some of the issues under our infrastructural sector,
miundo misingi ya shule za umma ili kutambua mahitaji ya wanafunzi.
Laboratories, just to name but a few, because these are facilities that are to facilitate learning and make learning smooth, whereby every student is able to access the right facility to be able to carry on with their studies and lead productive and fulfilling lives. And also about the funding models, no clarity
kwamba haturudi shuleni mpaka hayo ambayo dimadi yaweze kushughulikiwa yote. Tena kwa wazazi, tunaambia wazazi wakae na watoto wao nyumbani, hapo ndipo ambapo wako salama.
So what happens after this? Once we have no bursaries or we have no funds availed for the individual students, that is when we meet a lot of students being sent back home to bring their school fees. You know, some come from very long distances and they encounter a lot of problems regarding them sent home for school fees. And yet, some areas have these bursaries being offered. So this one actually reveals that there's a very huge disparity when it comes to the funding models and how students are able to receive their capitation to fund them in their education system. And then we have about the teachers, perennial strikes, whereby every now and then we don't spend like whole time does not come to an end. We have a looming strike coming up. This is also an issue of concern that maybe is making our education system to lag behind, because once teachers are on strike, looming strikes, then our children or the children of people, young students in Africa are forced to, they have no access to quality and substantial teachers to help them to carry on and reveal great or have them continue with their learning every day. So fellow Africans, when I speak and I say that our pillar number one, this pillar number one, governance, it is the software of every kind of development that we ever want in Africa. It is very true, because today, having spoken about education and all that happens in the education system, whereby most of these things are the source of most of the problems experienced in our education sector. Mostly it is because we have had issues like poor policy implementation now and then, because we have, every time a new regime comes in, they come in with new policy implementation about the funding models and whatever it is, the capitation for secondary school students, and then also whereby the bodies that the employers of some of the teachers, you may find that maybe they do not agree in terms of their payments, their salaries. So looming strikes, and every time, you know, people or the children have no access to this education because we have looming strikes. And also the issue of corruption among these systems, whereby we are finding it like because like here in Kenya we have everybody is eager to offer a bursary to a student, which is not bad. But then we realize that some places the money meant to capitate or to give capital for these students, to fund these students to go to school, maybe for free, because we have a very huge population that is not privileged to have enough money to go to school or to pay for their school fees. So they take advantage of these resources maybe to themselves, and students or some students end up not going to school because somebody actually looted their funds or their money which was supposed to cater for their school fees. So we realize that governance, that is what is our first pillar, because first, that is the only software, because all other things are practical. Governance, it is a trait, governance, it is time, it is somebody that is doing that. So once we have people who are goodwill, who are passionate, those are traits, from the inner side of somebody, that is when now we can now focus on other things like having quality education. Once we have good governance, whereby there is a very meticulous policy implementation and thoughtful, cognitive, that understands that this is really what needs to be done, so that to make sure that we have smooth learning in our institutions. Another thing is that we do produce a lot of graduates in Africa, and but there's still a very huge gap whereby these very many graduates actually they end up, some of them, we have a culture whereby they have to finish and then or graduate and then they're employed. But then in Africa now there is that population punch whereby the system cannot accommodate anymore. The employment opportunities have gone down. So these people end up being down, and so simply they do not get the employment opportunity that they're supposed to get. So it is an issue of discussion whereby we have to sort our governance system first. Let us have that good governance, and that is why the Change for African campaign, we are aiming first at making sure that we discuss governance, and governance we discuss this in terms of individuals. These are now people. People are the governance. These are things that govern people. So once we have people who understand that it is how it's supposed to be, then that is how we can be able to accelerate matters of development in one way or the other. So fellow Africans, being on 20th and it's a fine morning, guess what? Our show has just come to an end, and that is our first episode of the week. Join us tomorrow as we discuss our second pillar and second episode of the week about the potential that Africa has. Our pillar number 2. God bless you. Have a great day, and let's meet